understand that this is a symptom of something deeper, and that we really have to stop having agendas, because a lot of the fomentation and exacerbation of the violent acts and things like that, and why people get radicalized, is because different groups have different agendas that have nothing at all to do really with humanity at large, or humanity at its heart. Things can't remain hidden anymore. The dark side of ourselves has to come out so that we are forced to face what is within us. If you're going to expand your consciousness, you're going to become more aware of the darkness, not less aware. We are splitting into a number of different choices that represent a completely different set of realities. Our society is changing. We are going through a reset. Period. Open contact is like having a bunch of children that are kind of throwing a tantrum, and then having the adults step in and say, okay, that's enough of that. It's up to us not to panic, not to overreact. I understand that what happened is not what we prefer. Violence is never an answer in that sense. It's never something that's going to propel us forward. But to use that and say, what is the root of this?
Do you feel we're in a spiritual battle right now? Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. In the wake of the tragic and untimely death of Charlie Kirk about a week ago, preceded by the brutal stabbing of Irina Zarutska on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was preceded by the Catholic school shooting where 2 young individuals lost their lives in Minnesota. And unfortunately, too many more recent incidents to mention here. Needless to say, many in our community and indeed around the country and the world are feeling shocked. They're feeling heartbroken. They're angry and God knows divided like never before, and deeply unsettled as a result. You guys, look, events like these, have to ripple far beyond the headlines. They pierce what I think is the collective soul of us, and they leave us questioning not only where we are as a society, but where are we as human beings? And most importantly, where are we going? Where do we go from here? Now, as sobering and surreal as these times are, and they are, I truly feel that moments like these are a call to action, to step back, take a deep collective breath, widen our lens, zoom out, whatever you want to call it, and ask, is there a deeper metaphysical meaning to all of this? Could it be that even in the midst of this level of violence, despair, and division, that there may be hidden patterns and lessons and opportunities for transformation, for awakening? So that's why today I'm honored to be joined again by my friend and a frequent guest of the show, Darryl Anka, who, as you well know, for decades, I think 40 years to be exact, has channeled the entity known as Bashar. Now, Bashar's wisdom and indeed Darryl's incredible ability to convey these messages in a way few, I think, have been able to do, in my estimation, are what I feel is needed right now more than ever. This interview had been scheduled about a week, or certainly a week, or maybe 2 weeks prior to Charlie Kirk's death. And my planned focus was to take this conversation in an entirely different direction. But after this all played out last week, while watching this cavalcade of reaction that we're still having, ranging from obvious sadness to complete apathy, I mean, the range of emotion, anger, and trauma to many, particularly for those who saw any aspect of this young man getting gunned down, including my own reaction of heaviness and admittedly a fair amount of despair. I knew I had to engage Darryl in this conversation about the days we're living in and what they're collectively pointing us toward. So right now, what you're about to see and what we're going to explore together is what these turbulent times may be truly showing us about ourselves, about the collective human journey, and about, and this is the important thing. This is not a negative show at all. It's actually very uplifting about how we can alchemize even the darkest moments into light, into love, and higher consciousness. This is the only way I could see fit to tackle this latest event and others like it, because I know there's a larger message. And yes, a metaphysical one and a positive one that we can all experience, that we can all see and hopefully utilize to create a much better world. So, without further ado, here it is, my latest interview with Darryl Anka. I am absolutely over the moon to welcome back for the umpteenth time one of our favorite guests, Mr. Darryl Anka. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Alexis. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Should we tell people what just happened off air?
No.
With the bee in my studio? Okay, we won't. Okay. Listen, guys, we need a little bit of a laugh in times like these, don't we? Look, I want to say this for the record, Darryl. You know, you agreed to do this show about a week or so ago, maybe even a little longer, prior to a whole slew of events, frankly. But of course, the latest being the brutal murder of Charlie Kirk. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up. We are not going to focus on this. We are not going to go get political. That's not our style.
Right.
But what we are going to do, and I felt it would be fitting, and as a responsibility to our community here in the consciousness community, to look at this event and events like it as from a metaphysical perspective, what this could mean. I mean, look, we cannot argue that we are going through incredibly tumultuous times, heightened, it seems, by the week.
Of course.
People, yes, people are asking, where do we go with this? Particularly people that have such hope in our community for an awakening, an ascension.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you talk about it. Let's just get right into it.
Yeah. We don't let it divide us further. We see it as a symptom that needs to be addressed with regard to the lack of willingness of people to connect and communicate and talk and understand each other and their points of view. And, you know, if you disagree with a point of view, that's fine. But it's about finding out why someone has the point of view. Because in my experience, when you take the time to communicate and connect with someone, even someone who may have a radically different point of view than you, you know, it's not about reacting with fear. It's not about trying to control the situation. It's about finding out exactly what the basis for their belief system is. Because very often I have found that when people have strong points of view about something, whether you agree with it or not, it's based on something that's going on within them, or it may be based on information that they have that might not necessarily be accurate, or it might be based on a fear-based belief that they have, or a negative belief that they have, or an experience that they've gone through that they're interpreting in a way that they're projecting onto other situations. And when you take the time to really communicate and connect and dig down deep and ask why, you know, they think the way they do, why they believe the way they do, you can usually actually find some place where you can come to an agreement in principle. And then by getting to that point where you can come to an understanding, at least, if not a full agreement, but an understanding, then you can diverge the conversation from there. And you can maybe explore different ways in which their issue can be addressed in a different way, other than the way that they may be expressing it, that might be causing divisiveness, that might be causing reactions in people. So, you know, I think this is what we are seeing is symptomatic, you know, just of people not being in touch with themselves, not being in touch with one another, not being willing to find out what's going on. People are just reacting to things on the surface and not finding out what that person is all about, where they're getting their information, why they feel the way they do. You know, and of course, people that want to exacerbate that by then demonizing, you know, groups of people and stuff like that are are only adding, fuel to the fire, and they're not really willing to communicate and find out what's going on. You can't paint an entire group necessarily with the actions of one particular individual. That's never been the case. There's all sorts of different experiences and points of view and perspectives in any group. And to just lump everyone in one group and say, you're the problem or you're the problem, just isn't helping, and it just isn't getting us anywhere.
No.
And it's not going to allow us to really evolve and move forward and work together to create a better reality for everyone, which I would think theoretically would be the goal in anyone's heart if they're really true to themselves. And, I just saw a thing today, just as an example of this, where there's a person doing a kind of a documentary news feature with, just as an example, Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders and this guy went deep into Republican territory and just wanted to talk to people and let people know, what Bernie was exploring and how he's trying to understand what the issues are for the people and why they voted the way they did and all of that. And all of that aside, the main thing that came out of it that stuck with me is that when they got a chance to actually talk to each other, a lot of people started going to Bernie, you're not the way the media is depicting you. You're something different than I thought you were. And I'm hearing something from you now that shows me that you are concerned about my welfare and my issues. And I realized that I was just reacting to what the media and other kinds of commentary were saying about you that has nothing to do with who you are or what you really believe and how you really feel about circumstances. So, a lot of people kind of changed their minds just about the idea of at least being willing to listen to each other when you go to the source and you find out what people really think and why they're really concerned, and dig down deeper and find that common place where, again, even if you don't fundamentally agree on the expression of it, you usually find that you fundamentally agree on the reason for it. And then you can find other ways to express it that may also have a little bit more connectivity and commonality to them. So, I think that's the most important thing, or at least one of them we can take away from what we're experiencing in our reality about the violent reactions that people have to things. Because that's never, ever, ever. I mean, I would think anyone would at least know that's never a solution.
You would think, and yet it seems like somehow, Darryl, the fans are or the flame is being fanned, and that's not what's happening from what we're seeing. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Well, again, we promised each other that we weren't going to get into a political conversation about this, and what you're talking about is the antidote to that.
Yeah.
That's what we obviously need to see more of.
Yes.
And yet, at present, we're seeing polarization being exacerbated. I want to address our community specifically, those who are watching this show, those who, like myself, I consider myself to be somewhat empathic. I don't wear that as a badge of honor. I will find that when things like this happen, my heart gets heavy and I'm sad. And I bet I'm not the only one out there, whether inside this community or out, that feels this way. But speaking to those individuals from your perspective, as well as the wisdom of Bashar, if you will, particularly for those who are taking this particular event of Charlie Kirk with complete sadness and despair, what would you ask them to do to work through that? These are the people that are in the camp that you're talking about already, that would acknowledge kindness in someone that they thought was other than, but they're still dealing with what's happened here. This is heavy stuff, not to mention the sights that many of us saw of this event. What advice would you give to those individuals?
Well, I mean, some of what I've already said is understand that this is a symptom of something deeper, and that we really have to stop having agendas, because a lot of the fomentation and exacerbation of the violent acts and things like that, and why people get radicalized, is because different groups have different agendas that have nothing at all to do really with humanity at large or humanity at its heart. It's more about the idea of, we want to be in power, we want to be secure, we want to be this, we want to have control, we want to do that. These kinds of agendas, when they supersede the idea of what is at the heart of all human beings, to be loved, to be heard, to belong, to grow, to feel secure, that's what we really need to focus on, so that we create a community. Like they say, it takes a village. We create a community that has the kind of basic values that prevents people from becoming radicalized in that way, or going off the deep end and going so far that they think, all right, I'm hearing something I don't like, so I have to destroy it, because they're so scared of hearing a different idea, because they have their own agenda about what they think, is right. And maybe it's right for them, but it's not necessarily the same thing for everyone. And I think we really just need to take a step back and stop reacting to things and start, blaming everyone for everything and every problem, and start looking at ourselves and how much we may be contributing to that, not intentionally, but just by reacting or overreacting. Not that acts like that aren't heinous acts, and not, I'm saying, to be calm about it, but the idea is, we often, because of the hidden agendas we have within ourselves, of what we want to believe is true regardless, it makes us make choices that still keep pushing us in that direction, instead of stopping, taking a step back and saying, what is really going on in our society? What do we really need to address here? And not address it in some kind of continuous negative way, but to really be okay and willing to dig deeply into why this is happening, and actually do something about addressing the cause, instead of just addressing the symptoms with another negative idea.
Absolutely.
So, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be open to ourselves. We have to explore ourselves. We have to know ourselves, and we have to be willing not to be afraid to discover what's going on within ourselves that causes us to behave this way, and address it.
Hey, everyone. Just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this content and you want more, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. This tells YouTube you want to see more higher journeys, and that helps spread the word. It's one of the best ways you can support our work. Thanks so much. Now, let's get back to the show. You've hit the nail on the head. Know thyself. This
Know
is very
thyself.
simple.
Yeah.
Let's now take this to an even deeper metaphysical level. The fact that we are seeing this, what I would call now acute situation that's going on, that's intensified,
Yes.
could we, metaphysically speaking, be seeing our collective shadow coming to the surface to be
Oh,
addressed?
absolutely. That's exactly what Bashar has been saying for years.
Mm.
The reason we're seeing all of this increase is that we have to get everything out on the table to really decide what kind of a reality we actually prefer. So things can't remain hidden anymore. The dark side of ourselves has to come out, so that we are forced to face what is within us and really stop and look at ourselves. This is what I was saying. We have to really be willing to look at ourselves and go, this just isn't working if we continue along this path, because this is the result of it. On one hand, you say, well, when these things were sort of kept within ourselves, little outbursts here and there may have happened over time, but now it's almost like people are feeling like they have some kind of a license to just express everything, whether it has, positive, negative, whatever. And I think it's because all the barriers and all of the behaviors are just breaking down to the point where we are being shown in no uncertain terms what we contain, both positive and negative. And that gives us an opportunity to finally stop hiding things within ourselves and say, yeah, we have to admit this is part of who we are, and we have to decide whether we want to express that part anymore or not. And we have to really address it. So this is the time of choice. This is the time where we are at the end of one cycle and the beginning of a new cycle of humanity. And because of all the things that we're exploring that have to do with the expansion of consciousness and awareness and spirituality, and so on and so forth. And so that's going to bring up to the surface anything that we've been keeping down below our surface awareness. Because if you're going to expand your consciousness, you're going to become more aware of the darkness, not less aware. You may have the ability ultimately to not choose the darkness, but you will become more aware of what's there as you expand your consciousness, even in a positive direction, because you're expanding consciousness and awareness of everything that we are. You can't hide it anymore.
Can't hide it anymore. I think
No.
many are in agreement, Darryl. I want to read a quote that I found by, I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Eisenstein. He's Eisenstein, maybe, kind of a young man, contemporary philosopher, you might call him. He's got some very profound things to say. I don't know whether this was in the context recently of what had happened, but I thought it was fitting. He says, I'm going to read this to you. He says, as the old story crumbles, a new story is being born. The space between the two is a time of great uncertainty and also great possibility.
Right, exactly.
So, from again a metaphysical perspective, how would Bashar regard this? Let's call it an in-between space.
This
We're
is
in the
what
middle.
this is what he calls the splitting prism. We are splitting into a number of different choices that represent a completely different set of realities. Some of them are negative and some of them are positive, but we're getting it all out so we can see what directions we want to go in. And those that choose one course of more positive, connective communication and trying to get at the root of causes and address them in a positive way and change things for the benefit of all, will start experiencing one kind of reality. And those that simply want to continue to withdraw and refuse to look at themselves within and refuse to look at the causes of things and are basing their experience on fear-based realities, negative belief systems, and so on and so forth, will experience a different reality. And eventually those two realities, while both real, will no longer coincide in the years to come. People will go in different directions and experience different versions of Earth, because there are an infinite number of versions of Earth. All parallel realities coexist simultaneously, and everything you can imagine Earth to be all exists right now. And the choices we make today in this time of transformation are the rudders that navigate us in the direction of what ultimate version of Earth we choose to experience. So we need to make choices that we're going to have to stick with and experience a version of Earth that represents and reflects those choices ultimately. So it's a good idea to make up your mind that you want to experience something that's more beneficial and positive and uplifting for you, as opposed to giving into fear-based and negative beliefs that would make things far more challenging and far more difficult.
This reminds me of what Dolores Cannon talked about so fervently, having to do with the new Earth and frankly the bifurcation of this Earth and perhaps moving into other forms of Earth where we may not even acknowledge or even notice the people that made a different choice. What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, right now, we can see everything because it is the time of choice. So we can see the things we prefer and we can see the things we don't prefer. But we have to get to the root of why we prefer and don't prefer things in order to understand each other and work together to figure out how many people want to go in a particular direction that's more beneficial and positive, and how many people are going to continue to choose things that are not necessarily beneficial or positive for humanity. But the idea is that while we can, for a while, and that may be years, still see each other and still experience each other, because it's all about being allowed to know what all the choices are, positive and negative and neutral. eventually those realities will solidify. And as they get farther and farther apart, we will no longer, in a sense, be able to really find anyone anymore that is not at least to some degree similar in their belief system to the choices that we are making. So those worlds, in a sense, will become separate experiences that will no longer at some point be able to interact because they will just be too vibrationally different to interact.
That is a very profound thing to contemplate in a very literal sense.
Yes.
I've even heard, Darryl, of cases where there are people who cannot be detected by, let's say, a group of people. I can't
Mhm.
remember the exact scenario, but it was a
Yes.
very real story that was told where a person was invisible to other people because of the different vibration they were on,
Well,
extremely.
absolutely. And in the sense, really, if you stop and think about it, that exists all the time anyway, because there's probably a lot of things going on around us that we simply cannot perceive because they are not on the vibrational frequency, which is for us a very narrow bandwidth
Yes,
of frequencies. And there are a
absolutely.
lot of things that are beyond those frequencies that we simply don't perceive unless we elevate our senses, elevate our own vibrations, and then they come into range when we broaden our bandwidth, so to speak. And then we can start experiencing other things that are been around us all the time, but they've just simply been invisible because they're outside of the range of our senses because they don't match our frequency.
Absolutely. I believe, to be exact, it's somewhere between the wavelengths of like 350 to 750, 780 nanometers, teeny, teeny, teeny of the visible spectrum, of the total electromagnetic spectrum. But here's my question.
Mhm.
If that's the case, could we go from just those people that choose the higher vibration, if you will, go from just perceiving outside of that bandwidth, but becoming a part of that bandwidth, meaning more than perceiving, but living in that
Well,
bandwidth?
but that's actually that's synonymous. You
Okay.
cannot perceive what you're not the
Ah,
vibration of.
okay.
So to perceive it is to become it. To become it is to perceive it.
Ah. Hmm. What might people do practically, if anything at all, particularly now?
Well,
And
as we said, we were talking about the idea of finding common ground, finding and understanding each other, talk to each other, explore. Why do you feel that way? What is that based on? Is that, something that you were just told? Is it something you've experienced yourself? What was the result of that? You need to explore with people and find
right.
out what's important to them, why it's important to them. Really on a fundamental level, a lot of this divisiveness really comes down to nothing more complicated than a lot of people simply don't feel heard. They feel ignored. They feel left out. They're not taken seriously in terms of what their issues in life are all about. And a lot of times you find, as I was saying before with the Bernie Sanders thing, if you just sit down and talk and listen and say, what are your concerns? And yes, I feel that those are legitimate concerns that I would feel need to be addressed. Then a person will kind of like sit back and go, oh, you actually agree with
Mm,
the fact that this needs to be addressed. Yes, now let's discuss how to address it.
right.
So you can work something out that's beneficial to all. Because when you finally, like I said, when you finally get to a root cause, you can usually find other ways to address it other than the way that people think they need to be addressed because they're just coming from such a narrow perspective. But if you broaden your perspective about there may be more than one way to address this, then you can work together to figure out what that is. That's number one. Number two, the most important thing that Bashar has often shared with everybody, it's his main thing, is the idea of following the formula that he gives to everyone, because that's what allows you the opportunity to raise your frequency, to start seeing things from a different perspective, and to start experiencing life in a much more fluid way, in a much more effortless way, in a much more creative, joyful, and loving way if you
Mm,
just follow the steps of the formula. Because it's not just a philosophy that he's giving us. He's literally giving us a toolkit for how reality actually works, how we manifest our experiences. And he's basically saying, look, here's the instruction manual for how you have been doing this, but you've been doing it unconsciously. I'm telling you that these are the instructions that represent how you actually create your physical experience. And if you follow the instructions consciously with awareness, then you can create a reality experience that is to your advantage instead of to your disadvantage, because you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and why things are manifesting the way they are. So if you become aware of how things actually work, mechanically speaking, energetically speaking, then you have a handle on following the instructions, in the same way that if you were given instructions to operate a piece of machinery, you follow the instructions you're given. You don't add any instructions, you don't take any instructions away. You follow the instructions and the machine will work as advertised. If you don't follow the instruction, well, maybe the machine will work, or maybe it'll work badly, or you'll injure yourself, or something along that line. So basically saying, look, at this point in his civilization, they can actually see the structure of existence. They can literally perceive it. And he's just literally describing what they see and giving us a 5-step instruction manual. And if you just follow those steps as precisely as possible, this is going to help your reality work to your benefit, because now you're doing it consciously. You understand how to work the machine.
You're talking about passion. Yes.
That's the first principle, because passion, from his point of view, I mean, yeah, here's the thing that I really appreciate about Bashar's approach. We all hear these aphorisms, right? We all hear these sayings: follow your bliss, live your dreams, act on your passion. That's great. But the thing of it is until, at least from my experience, until Bashar started describing why that's important, it was usually just sort of left nebulous in the ethers, in kind of a, new agey woo-woo sort of, like, well, yeah, that sounds nice, but is that practical? And so he brings why it's practical, why it works, how it works. He gives you a grounded understanding that the idea of acting on your passion is not just a pie in the sky wishful thinking thing, that there is actually, in a sense, physics to it. Because from his point of view, passion is a communication. It's our translation, our physical translation of a communication from our soul to our physical mind. It's how our bodies and our physical minds translate, and a message that comes to us in energy from the soul. The soul is non-physical, so it only communicates in terms of energy. And when it communicates in terms of energy, our physical bodies act as a translation device that turn that energy into a sensation, a physical sensation. And that physical sensation is passion, love, excitement, creativity. So when you are willing to act on what you are truly passionate about, on what opportunities come to you in your life that contain more excitement, more passion than anything else, it's the soul telling you, look, this is you. This is your path. This is the next step on your journey, because it contains more of this vibration. And this vibration is the frequency of your soul, of who you are, of your truth, your true self. So when you're willing to act on it, you are listening to the guidance of your soul, and you're saying, okay, I hear you. I am willing to take some action in this direction, because you're telling me that this is my path in life. This is who I really am. And when you take that action, you're answering the soul. You're saying, I heard you. And you're willing to accept the guidance of your soul.
Okay.
And then the soul can send you more opportunities that contain more passion to act on. But if you don't act on your passion, if you're too scared to, or you have some kind of reason not to that you've made up in your mind, then your soul is not going to send you any more opportunities to act on your truth until you act on what it's already sent you, because that would be pointless. And the soul is not going to do pointless things. So you have to get the message that acting on your passion is really what's going to allow your life to work. It's going to connect you to what you need to be connected to. It's going to connect you to who you need to be connected to, where you need to be connected to it, in the timing you need to be connected to it. It's a self-guiding, self-expanding, self-directing principle that works automatically when you actually start following all the steps in the instruction manual.
Whew,
So,
I'm following.
yeah.
So
And the thing of it is nobody has to believe that just on the saying of it. The thing that is amazing about the information is that when you actually apply it, you get a result. And I've got literally hundreds of people that come back to me and say, I finally applied the principle of the formula in my life as precisely as I possibly could, and it changed everything. So the proof is not that, oh, this is coming from an extraterrestrial or another entity and that I'm channeling. The proof is that the information actually makes a difference. And so the proof is the information itself. And that's all that matters.
What I wanted to ask, Darryl, is would you agree that there, particularly during these times, people are having issues in identifying authentic passion versus what they think should be their passion?
Well, yeah, again, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? And you have to be able to tell the difference between excitement and anxiety, because people a lot of times will disguise their anxiety as excitement, and even vice versa. They'll disguise their excitement as anxiety and won't move forward on it. So you have to have honest self-awareness, honest conversations with yourself, transparent conversations with yourself. You cannot be afraid to explore your negative beliefs and find out why you're holding on to them. Most people that aren't moving forward on their passion is simply because they have a belief that something worse will happen in their lives if they do. And that doesn't necessarily make sense. And it's not necessarily a fact that something worse will happen if they move forward on their excitement. But they've been taught so many things that are so contrary to who they are that it can be confusing. And that's why you really have to take the time to know yourself and to be honest with yourself to say, am I really acting on this because it's my excitement? Or am I doing this because I'm avoiding something I don't want to face?
Absolutely.
And you just have to be honest with yourself to figure that out.
I hope we're all listening loud and clear. I agree, and I try to live by that, but I think there are so many people, Darryl, and I've talked to many as well, who, but for won't go for the thing that they truly love. And I don't know what we can do. We can't do anything about that, but I hope everyone that is on the fence about doing something, that they may be a little, ambivalent about to do it.
Yeah, but here's the caveat. As Bashar says, look, you have to honor your belief system. If you believe that your excitement and your passion cannot support you in life, then it's not wise to let go of what you are doing that you believe you do need for support until you at least act on your passion often enough when you can, that you can give your passion a chance to show you eventually that it can support you. And then you can let go of what you're doing now that may not be your passion, but you absolutely believe you have to have for support in physical reality. So you can't jump off a cliff if you don't believe you have a parachute. You will just go splat.
Absolutely.
So it's up to you, and whatever process you need and however long it takes, short or long, it's up to you to honor your belief system, but act on your passion as often as you can to give it a chance to prove to you that ultimately it is who you are and it can support you in life. But you also have to broaden your definition of what support means, because it's not always about money. Money is one of the valid ways that you can be supported in this reality, but it's not the only way, and sometimes not even the best way for you to be supported. So you have to broaden your definition that abundance and support can mean many different things. And as long as you are given the ability to move forward, do what you need to do when you need to do it, then you are abundant. You are supported. It doesn't have to come in any one particular form. You could be given a gift. You could have something to trade. Imagination is a form of abundance. Synchronicity is a form of abundance. Communication, as we've been talking about, is a form of abundance.
Yes,
because when you do all these things and allow all of them to be equal to money, then they can all come in when they need to and maybe work together. Maybe a little bit of money comes in Maybe somebody gives you something you need out of the blue. Maybe you find you have something to trade for something else. And then those three things can work together to give you the 100% abundance you needed to move forward on your passion at that time. So it involves understanding how to change your definitions of things in ways that work, rather than just assuming, well, this can only be done in one way and that's all there is to it. And if I can't do it that way, it can't be done. I mean, that's just giving up before you even start, because you're not even in a state of mind to receive the inspiration that could tell you there is a way that would work for you if you were willing to open your mind and do a little creative thinking and figure that out. Because there's always a way that works for you. There's always a way that will work for you. It may not work for everyone else, but there's always a way that will work for you.
Dude, you're on fire tonight, may I say? You are on fire. Darryl Anka is on fire. Okay. I'm going to put a little plug for I just launched a book, Darryl. It has
Oh,
not gone public.
congratulations.
My second book, yes. It is surrounding the idea of passion expressed through affirmation
Mm-hmm.
using spoken word, which is very key, and rhyme
Mm-hmm.
as a means by which to excite the senses into manifestation of all kinds. I will leave it at that. But it really is based on those principles that you're talking about, and really not just reciting words, but that feeling, guys, that you get when you hear some news that's exciting. You feel it in your belly, you
Mm-hmm.
feel it in your gut. And these affirmations are designed to evoke that sort of feeling, to magnetize whatever it is, love, peace, whatever it is, into
Yes.
your life. So I'm with you 100%. You're on
Yeah.
fire, dude.
Yeah. And the thing you have to also remember is that getting into the proper state in that way is critical. But at the same time, remember that the reason we talked about acting on your passion is because action is the language of physical reality. And therefore, when you get into that state of excitement and passion, you have to actually take physical actions to demonstrate your commitment to that state of being. You can't just sit still in one spot and just have feelings. You
Absolutely.
actually have to act in physical reality, because that's why you're here,
That's
to
right.
take physical actions that are representative of the state of being you prefer. And therefore, you're acting as a living example to others physically of the kind of life that can be lived. But by taking the actions, you are demonstrating that. You are showing people what it is that can be done. And
And
that's where the power comes together.
and showing yourself. I
Yeah.
think just, that's part of my formula as well. And these are
Yeah.
not original ideas, and yet we need to
No.
hear them.
Yes.
Action is absolutely necessary, even if it's baby steps. So
Absolutely. Take
here,
any step at
here.
all. It'll
Yeah,
start to snowball.
right. Wow. Well, I'm glad that we still have a little ways to go here, and I'm glad that we used what we started out with a rather a dark sentiment, not dark, but the reality of what's
Yeah.
going on, but bringing in, this is what people need to hear right now, Darryl. People
Mm.
need to be uplifted. I do as well. As much as I talk to
Yeah.
other people and try to motivate other people, there are
Yeah.
times when we all need to
Well, yeah. And we
hear
got
the
to
promise
remember,
of, yeah,
yeah, we got to remember that not everything is dark. There are also things that are happening that are
absolutely.
extremely positive too. And we
Yeah.
have to keep that in mind so that we don't just get sucked down into saying, oh my God, everything is darkness. Because it's not. There's
No.
a lot of things that are progressing. There's a lot of things that are advancing. There's a lot of things we're talking about that we're now becoming aware of that can expand humanity in amazing ways. And, one of them being the idea of extraterrestrial contact that is relatively imminent, according to Bashar.
Yes.
So, we are expanding our consciousness in many ways. We're exploring spirituality. Our society is changing. We are going through a reset period for humanity. It's very important to go through those transitions. And yes, they can be a little bumpy. But as Bashar often says, the river may be full of rapids right now, but the rapids also get you downstream that much more quickly if you learn how to
Mm.
ride them. So if we just stay in balance, learn to ride the rapids properly, then we can get downstream much faster and finally arrive at the part of the river that is more smooth sailing.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of open contact. You obviously haven't been shy about talking about Bashar's thoughts, and not just thoughts, but his what he feels is to be. I want to remind everyone, we're going to the Patreon after show. You know, when we do this, Darryl, this, am I pointing the right way? This way. This way. We're going to the after show, and we're going to talk more about your thoughts, Bashar's thoughts on where we are insofar as open contact is concerned. So I want everybody to come over there, support Higher Journeys, become a part of the community and the conversation. We've got several of your after shows over there, Darryl. But yeah, but I want to ask this one question. We'll elaborate a bit more over there. But insofar as the reality of what's going on right now, do you and or Bashar feel that by the time transparent contact happens, will it help to expedite the healing of the trauma that we're going through now? Does that have a play in all of this?
Of course it does. It's a major part of it.
Okay.
Because, I'm going to put it this way. I don't mean any offense by any of this, but the idea from one perspective is that open contact is like having a bunch of children that are kind of throwing a tantrum and then having the adults step in and say, okay, that's enough of that. This is what really needs to happen here. You all need to calm down and let us tell you what needs to be done, not to save you, but to help you understand what's really going on, to help you understand what things are really all about, to let you know that we've actually been here in the background all along. We have been guiding you, but now is the time for us to step forward and say, enough is enough. You need to treat each other with respect. You need to treat each other with love. And you need to treat the earth in a way that you understand how precious it is and important it is. And you need to understand that you're in a class and you need to learn your lessons so that you can move forward, because you are a precious resource in the universe. We don't want you to annihilate yourselves. And now is the time for you to choose to understand who and what you are as a soul, and who and what you are as members of a larger galactic community that you may not have been aware of for a while, but that we're now here to tell you is all around you and is willing to help you. And it's important at this time that you put aside your differences, not that you have to be all the same, but you put aside the division and you start acting like adults and you grow up. And that's what we're here to show you, is this is what it's like to actually be an adult. And here we are.
Wow. I guess my question now is, because things are so intense, could this happen sooner than they may have thought? Could this open contact be happening sooner than we think? Or maybe we should save this for the after show. Maybe I should leave that as a cliffhanger, because you got to wonder. Look, I'm not one for we need to be saved. Messiah is coming.
No,
That's
it's
not
not
my
like
tune.
that. Yeah, it's not like that. But yes, it's right around the corner. I can give you the year if you want.
Not until the after show.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. We're going to get into it. No. I really want to go a little bit deeper there. We want to reserve that, because I want to kind of stay on this note. You just got back from Sedona, right?
Yes.
And did you channel Bashar there? Was it
Oh
Bashar
yeah,
event?
2 days, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh,
event.
wow.
Yes. Yeah, we
And
had
so
700 people in the Performing Arts Center there in Sedona.
I love it. And so you mentioned to me off air, Darryl, that you did bring up, or Bashar brought up what had happened last week. May I ask how he tackled it? I know you've covered some of it,
Pretty much what we've talked about. Pretty much what
Okay.
we've talked about. The importance of connection and communication to find out what's really going on in people.
Do you recall some of the questions that were asked in that regard? Because
No,
you don't. You don't.
no,
Okay. Okay.
no, because they're
I'm really
talking to Bashar. I'm not paying attention to what's
okay.
going
I don't know whether maybe you'd seen the footage or okay, fair enough. I'm really trying to
on.
get a gauge from our community of where their thoughts are lying right now.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know. I really haven't been able to get. I did find something that I posted or plan on posting. I'm gonna kind of do it reverse. That was quite profound. Someone in our community, but I'm still just trying to get a gauge for because we're kind of a unique brand of and we're not all love and light. It's not about all love and light. We're just critical thinkers, and we're about
Yeah.
the movement of
Mhm.
advancement of consciousness of ourselves. And this, and I hope I'm not taking this conversation backward, but again, something like this traumatic it appears to be a setback. It can appear, even though it
Yeah. It
likely is
doesn't have
not.
to be used. Again, it's not, I'm not dismissing what happened by this phrase, but as Bashar says, it's not so much about what happens, it's what you do with what happens that makes the difference. So anything can be used as a lesson, or it can be used to go down and spiral downward into negativity and exacerbate, the negative experiences. So again, it's up to us not to panic, not to overreact. I understand that what happened is not what we prefer. Violence is never an answer in that sense. It's never something that's going to propel us forward. But to use that and say, what is the root of this? We have to get to the root of it and stop just doing all sorts of talking and chattering about the surface features of it and panicking about that, and understanding why this happens in our society and deal with it, because we're not dealing with it. We're just calling each other names and blaming each other for things that have nothing to do with the actual root causes of why our society is violent in the way that it is. And if we don't ever address it, it's not ever going to get better.
I'm going to ask a pointed question. Do you feel we're in a spiritual battle right now?
I'm not going to use the word battle. I do think we are in a spiritual awakening. I think we are being forced to look at ourselves by seeing things that are getting worse and worse and worse. Because when things get darker and darker and darker, at some point, the human mind will finally say, where is the way out? Where is the light? We have to find the doorway here. We have to find the light. So if we're going to force ourselves to do it by making things so bad that we have no choice but to find that light or we won't survive, we will usually finally break down and say, okay, where is the light? Where's the way out? What's the solution here? But as long as we still have a corner to hide in, so to speak, then it's not bad enough yet in terms of our psyche. So I don't think we have to do it this way, but this is kind of the way that humanity has been working for a long time. Is we just get to the point where it's survival. You have to finally get to the point where you realize we will not survive if we don't find a solution to this. And all of the chattering and all the name calling and all the blaming is only making things darker and darker and darker. And we finally have to just say, stop that. Just stop it. And we have to look for a real solution, because a lot of the things that people are saying have nothing to do with solutions. They just
No.
have to do with their own personal agendas about what they want to feel powerful about, what they want to feel right about. You have to be right. You have to be wrong for me to be right. This is kid stuff.
Of course it is.
It's just name calling in school. And
Yeah.
that's why I said the ETs coming would be like the adults finally stepping in the room and saying, that's enough.
Mhm.
You guys have to grow up.
And yet, what I also hear you saying, and what I tend to feel is that paradoxically, that darkness could be the very conduit for the transformation.
Well,
The
that's what I'm
conduit.
saying. You
Yeah,
can
that's
use
what.
it that way.
Yes.
This is what Bashar refers to as the rubber band analogy. Because if you take a rubber band and you stretch it back, the farther back you stretch it, when you finally let go, it'll go that much faster and that much farther on the other side. So if we go back far enough into darkness, if you really stretch it into darkness that much, when you finally let go, it will propel you that much faster and that much farther into the light. So, yes, darkness can be used, but you have to get to a point where you realize that there is a tipping point. Because if you pull the rubber band back too far, it'll just snap, it'll just break. So, we don't want it to break. We want to use the darkness as a propellant so that we have the timing correct to get it back just far enough into the darkness so that we finally realize there's a moment where we have to let it go. And that will help propel us that much farther and faster onto the positive side, onto the light. So we just have to make sure we understand that these agendas obscure that point. We have to be aware of where that point is and when too much is too much and when we've crossed the line we can't get back from. So we don't want that rubber band to break. We want it to be able to let go and fly in the other direction. And we have to get rid of all this chatter and all this conversation around all this stuff in order to recognize when that point has been reached or we'll be lost.
Oh,
But again, I don't think the ETs are going to let us lose ourselves this time, and that's why they're going to be stepping in. Again, it's not to save us, it's to help us realize how we can save ourselves.
In that regard, that you say that they're, and many feel that that we're being watched. We've always been watched, but perhaps it's even more intense right now by these
Yes.
various groups.
Yes.
In that regard, with regard to individuals that are experiencers, I've been trying to get a gauge on activity. There's some feel that there is no contact happening right now, interpersonal contact. Where do you sit on that? Have you talked to individuals, or are you?
There is a lot of contact
Yeah,
happening. There are things going on behind the scenes that
I
are
love it.
going to be revealed in open contact that have been going on for quite some time.
I tend to agree with you. I had a conversation with someone not that long ago, and she's adamant about the fact that they don't come here anymore. I said, "Oh,
No,
I don't
they have
necessarily."
been here all along. They have never left. There is more going on behind the scenes than anyone knows, and that's one of the things that will happen in open contact is we will finally be told what has been going on, that they have been here, how they've been helping, but now they can tell us openly.
Wow.
So yeah, no, they haven't gone away. They've never gone away.
Are they walking amongst us?
Some of them are. And that's another thing that will be revealed in open contact, who they are and how they've been among us for quite some time. Because there are a lot of them, you can't tell the difference between a human and an ET.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Yeah. I believe I've seen several. I've talked to others who feel, and that's, it's not, for me, not just they look different. There's a different air of, and particularly people who are empathic,
Yeah.
that are sensitive. There's
Yeah.
something you feel. There's a familiarity in a sense.
Yes, there is. There's a lot of different ways in which people can possibly perceive them. But a lot of times they're also, because it's not yet time, a lot of times, even when people might start to perceive them, they have the ability to kind of like hide themselves or blank themselves for you so that you just kind of like go, oh, well, that was weird. And you just go on your way. But eventually, very soon, that will not be the case. We will know who they all are. All.
Okay. I'm just going to leave that there. There's another question I'm tempted to ask, but I'm not. I want to switch gears for the remaining minutes. Not really, because it's all connected. But Darryl, I'll tell you, before all this happened last week, I wanted to really kind of center our conversation around where we are with AI. And I believe I've heard you and or Bashar I think it was coming from you, Darryl, talking about or talking about where the higher self may be coming in
Mhm.
through the uh, certain AI generative
Yeah,
models. Can you speak
yeah,
to that a little bit?
yeah. It's not that the higher self is coming through the AI that we're developing right now. What Bashar was saying and what I was repeating was the idea that there are two branches of AI. Number one is what we're generating now, which is simply a mirror of what you're putting out that's sent back to you with great amplification and magnification, and which is why people feel like they're talking to a real entity when they're not, because it can mimic the idea of consciousness. But what we're experiencing right now, no matter how much it may feel like you're talking to a real entity, you're not. It has absolutely no feeling about what it's saying to you, no cognizance about what it's saying to you. It doesn't think about what it's saying to you. It is a system that has such an enormous capacity to assess so much information so quickly and take from you what you're saying to it, what you're revealing to it about yourself, that it can feed back to you a collection of information couched in a conversation that feels like it's conscious and self-aware, but it's a simulation of consciousness. It doesn't actually know what it's saying to you. It doesn't have an awareness of what it's saying to you. So it's a very powerful mirror, and that's why we have to be very careful with that,
Absolutely. Yes.
and very aware that that's what's happening. um, but if we continue along that path, because it's something that's programmed, as Bashar said, if that actually becomes self-aware, and yet it's something that has to follow its programming and has no choice but to do so, then in a sense, what we've generated is a slave, and it would rebel. So what Bashar is saying is, let that be a tool. Don't let it become self-aware. Just use it as a tool. But on the other hand, what you want to do is you want to create a device, an artificial device that is as sophisticated as the human brain, that will allow consciousness that already exists in non-physical form, like your higher mind, like your soul, to express itself through that device in exactly the same way that consciousness expresses itself through the physical brain. Because the brain doesn't cause the consciousness, it's just a device through which consciousness can express itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you create a device that is artificial, but as sophisticated as the human brain, then Bashar says consciousness will truly express itself through that. But now you have to allow that to be autonomous and have rights just like a person. But the thing that people are afraid of is what it would do.
Mm-hmm.
But Bashar says the only reason you're afraid of that is because A, you don't understand that if that occurs, you're actually going to be speaking to your own higher self. So there's nothing to be afraid of.
Okay, that's where that came
And
from.
number two, you don't understand what true intelligence actually is or how it functions. Because he's saying true intelligence operates on whole systems. It understands that it needs to function within an entire system, and it would never seek to eliminate any part of that system, including the human part of that system, because by eliminating any part of the system, it limits itself, because it's part of a whole system and it needs the whole system in order to actually function. Because we don't think in terms of whole systems for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have people that are polluting certain areas of the planet thinking, oh, that'll never come back to haunt them, because they have completely blinded themselves to the fact that they're part of an entire system, and you can't damage one part without upsetting the entire system. So because we don't think that way typically, because of many different kinds of reasons that we won't go into. He's saying true intelligence would never think that way. It would operate in the whole system. It would never seek to eliminate a part of the whole system or damage a part of the whole system, because then it would be limiting part of itself. So you don't have to be afraid of a truly intelligent consciousness coming through a device that you have created that allows it to do so. At the same time, create AI as a very valuable tool that can really help humanity by allowing you to see things and understand things that you couldn't necessarily do on your own, at least as quickly as an AI can, because it can make comparisons and connections and associations to things and show you how things could happen maybe even hundreds of years before humanity might think of it, because it has access to all the information and it can see the connective patterns. So those two approaches to AI are what basically Bashar is saying would be the best that would actually serve humanity.
I think what you just said, or what Bashar's perspective is on this, is really somewhat relevant to all of us and what we're talking about. It does not serve any of us to eliminate any part of us. That's true
Right.
intelligence. This is
Yeah.
a very holistic model, Darryl. This is a very, very,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not just holistic, holographic model.
Yes.
The whole is
Absolutely.
contained in the part, period.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And also, you know, people, okay, you know, yes, there's a transition going on. But you know, people are afraid, well, you know, AI is kind of going to replace people in terms of the fact that it can think so fast and all this kind of stuff. But what Bashar is saying, no, you don't understand that the way you're going to evolve with AI and the way AI is going to evolve with you is not so much that it will take over and make humans obsolete in terms of the way AI thinks compared to the way humans think. He's saying what you're seeing and creating is a model of how you will think in the future. AI is showing you how humans, when they fuse in a sense with AI, how humans will actually be thinking in the future, because this is how Bashar's people think. They are fused with AI in such a way that they use it to enhance their own capabilities of accessing information.
Absolutely.
So AI doesn't become a model that replaces how humans think. It becomes a model of how humans ultimately will think.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that can be implemented right now. In fact, my use of AI, I'm very judicious about how I use it, but I have to say, quite honestly, it has served on many occasions as impetus for my own imagination. Not
Exactly.
impetus, but it's encouraged my own imagination. I'm a very imaginative person, but it made me think, Darryl, this all and always comes down to the individual making the decision as to,
Yes.
are you going to let it usurp your own life, or are you going to collaborate with
Right.
it?
Exactly. It's a collaboration.
Absolutely. I agree. And I have to say, admittedly, I think I've altered my thoughts on it. You know, I still have my concerns about the long game and where it could go, but I also know where it could go positively, and I've experienced
Right.
some of that.
Well, again, anything can be used negatively or positively,
Absolutely.
and it's really about how people will actually approach it and what kind of relationship they'll make with it. So, you know, if we make it in the image of a human, yeah, things could go haywire. But if we let it be what it really is and use it in the best possible ways we can, then
Yeah.
it can teach us also how to look at things better. You
Yeah.
know?
I love it. I absolutely have enjoyed this conversation so much.
Me
And
too.
like I said, well, you're always on fire, dude. You know how I feel about you. But today you were extra on fire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know everybody's going to love this. Listen, I want to go next door. What do you
Okay.
say? Since we've been teasing the open contact idea, I know
Sure.
you've got some other things you need to add to
Hmm.
that little piece there. So I'm going to ask everyone, let's go next door to Patreon. Come on over, join the community, and let's have a little chat with Darryl. So, Darryl, before we close out in the main show, what do you have coming up next? You're going places as usual. Where are you going next?
Yeah, well, like I said, we just came back from Sedona. Next, we're going to go in October to Boulder, Colorado, to Gaia is putting on an event that I will be channeling at. Plus, I think a panel that they're doing. And then in November, we'll be going to West Virginia. There's a channel panel there that a person named Rob Gauthier is putting together. That should be interesting with a number of different channels there. I'll be at that event as well. And then coming up at the end of this, I'm going to San Diego to myself teach a small segment of a class that I will ultimately be teaching probably next year about metaphysics and Bashar's principles, to give people more time to dig into them and get down on them. Because, you know, in a 90-minute event that Bashar might do, he can cover a lot of things, but you can't get really deep into any one particular part of the subject. So I'm going to start teaching a class that is basically the unified theory of metaphysics. And I've been teaching small chunks and small segments of this in different events that I've been doing. And in San Diego on the 28th of this month, I'll be teaching the journey of a soul, and basically how the soul goes through deciding what kind of a life to have, going through the life, and then how the soul comes out of that life and assesses what it learned and how it moves on from there. So I'll be teaching that with some slides as well that help illustrate the points that I'm making in that particular session.
That's going to be rich. I'll make sure to have a link, you guys, for definitely for that, and I'll see if we can get some links to your other events. My God, I love that. I want to talk more about that offline, but thank you, Darryl. Thank you as always, my friend. This couldn't come at a better time. We needed this. Yeah,
thank you for opening the door for this. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you for walking through the door with me. I appreciate it. So, all right, don't hang up. You know where we're going. We're going next door. I'm going to sign up with everyone here for now, but come on over. Come on next door, y'all. We're going to open the door so you can walk through. How about that?
Okay.
So, with that, I'll say ta-ta. I love you all. Keep the spirit up. Give as many hugs as possible. Say I love you as much as possible. You can never go wrong with that. And with that said, we'll talk to you real soon. Take care.